and welcome to Coffee with a Deb, where we have coffee with a Deb. My name is Beck, and I will be your host for this episode, and I'm very excited to be chatting today with Mark, who is the developer behind Pie in the Sky. Welcome, Mark.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Of course. I'm very excited to chat with you about all of the things. But first, we have to kick this off with arguably the most important question of this entire podcast, and that is, what coffee or caffeinated beverage are you drinking today?
I have a homemade coffee today because I'm working from home today, but I do really like my coffee. So I grind my own beans, and the beans I get from Twin Peaks Roastery in Perth, which are the best coffee beans in my opinion. So,
Okay.
so yeah, it's a homemade one today. Yeah.
If it does the job. If it doesn't, I like my homemade coffees. I've got one of the fancy like Breville coffee machine things that you have to like do all the grinding and the pressing and the things, and I like it often better than a cafe coffee.
I don't. I love my homemade coffee, but there's something about, I don't know. I'm not a barista, and there's specific milk and process, and I don't know. There's something about, like, I often do, even when I'm working from home, go out for a coffee. There's a cafe nearby that I really enjoy, and then at my work there's a coffee shop called Howard's Groove. I promise I'm not being paid to advertise Howard's Groove and Twin Peaks beans, but honestly, I think like their coffee is like the best in the world. I haven't had all the coffee in the world, but I've been to a few countries, and I'm always excited to come back. And it's one of the highlights of going to work for me is that the cafe next door is just amazing coffee. So
Yeah. Oh, we love that.
So I do like my homemade coffee, but I think my standards are now like too high. I think it's
yeah. Very, very fair. I am cheating today. I have
I saw that.
Monsters.
Peach is it? Yeah.
Yeah, Peachy Keen it's called. It's my focus just went. It's my favorite flavor of Monster, and it's the PM, so I can't drink coffee anymore. I have to have something fizzy in the PM is generally my rule.
I thought you were
like coffee in the
meant
morning
because of the caffeine content. I was like, you're not doing that.
No,
that's definitely got caffeine in it.
It definitely does, though.
You won't have a hot coffee in the afternoon?
Oh, sometimes, but
Iced
it's not
coffee?
the same. Sometimes an iced coffee, it depends. But usually it's like the milk thing.
Okay.
There's a limit to the milk that I can have. And like, I don't know, coffee is just a morning thing or a random like 8 o'clock at night thing. So I don't know.
I can have coffee any time of the day. It doesn't.
Yeah, it doesn't keep you up.
But also no judgment. I also have the energy drinks in the morning on my way to work before I hop on the train. Usually if I'm running late and I don't have time to wait for the coffee to be ready, I'll just grab and that would be a no sugar mother, actually. Controversial opinion, but I still think that they're great.
The mothers aren't bad. Yeah, the mothers aren't bad. I like all the no sugar ones, basically. I don't discriminate. But this is my favorite flavor of Monster, so it's a good afternoon when I'm drinking my favorite flavor of Monster, in my opinion.
I don't think I've tried peach, so I'll give it a shot.
It's pretty good. If you like peach things, it's good. Like iced tea, like the peach iced tea, it's almost kind of like that. But yeah.
But fizzy
anyway,
and
let's
full
talk
of
about
caffeine.
Games. Fizzy and full of caffeine, just like I like it.
Yeah.
So tell us, how did you get into creating games?
So I started creating games when I was really young. I think ever since I got my first computer, it was one of the things that I wanted to do. Like growing up, I did a lot of drawing. I still love drawing a lot and loved playing games, obviously. And I used to draw before I even really understood the concept of developing games. I would draw games on pieces of paper. So there would be like one level on a piece of paper, and then you flip the paper over and there'd be the next level. Just little ideas in my little kid brain. And then I started developing. There was an application called Click and Play that
Uh-huh.
my cousin had, and he was showing me it, and he was sort of making sort of like almost like little animated movies or screensavers, stuff like that. And I was like, oh, you can control this? And he was like, yeah. I was like, you can make games with this. Like, this is what it's for. And I started working, making click and play games just nonstop on my little computer at home. I'm still trying to find, I saved a bunch of them on 3.5-inch floppy disks.
Yeah.
I've got
Yeah.
stored somewhere that I really want to find and recover and get a floppy disk reader. And yeah, that's how it all really started, was with click and play. And then that company ended up creating another game engine called, I think it was Games Factory or something like that. And I just sort of
Uh-huh.
carried that knowledge over and did a little bit of modding here and there. And then wasn't until I got to university that I sort of discovered Unity, and that's when things really sort of became really accessible and really much easier to develop my own games. And yeah, so I guess I've just been doing it for a long time, since I was
Forever.
a kid, and I've always loved doing it, and will always continue doing it.
Yeah, that's so interesting that you got into it, like making games so young, because you hear a lot of people that were like, oh, yeah, no, I was always interested in it. And then I think it's usually the teenage years when everyone kind of experiments a bit more. But you were like, nope, even if it's pen to paper, I'm making a game
Yeah,
now.
yeah. I was lucky in that regard, and that like I learned a lot of things early on, and
Mm,
um and yeah, the crazy thing, like with making games, like I'm still learning so much every day, and I've
mm.
still got so much to learn, that I think, yeah, I definitely had an advantage being able to look at things from a development lens from early on, rather than just from a player lens. Yeah, definitely lucky in that regard. So thank you, Click and Play, and my cousin Brendan for showing it to me.
Um, that's so cool. So, what were some of your favorite games growing up in that kind of time when you were? Was there any that like you played and you were like, oh, I want to make a game, like I want to make something like this?
Yeah, so for me, Super Nintendo was hugely influential console for me. That's probably
Uh-huh.
the console I played the most games on. So, Donkey Kong Country, Super Mario World, Super Metroid, those are games that A Link to the Past, hugely influential. I think A Link to the Past, still to this day, I think about that game and think, oh, I need to make something like that.
Yeah.
That really, yeah, that and Chrono Trigger as well. I actually
Hmm.
didn't play Chrono Trigger growing up. I didn't have a cartridge of it, but I replayed it on, I think they released like a mobile version of it. I still had the nostalgia for the style, like the music style and the pixel art style. But playing that game, even from a modern perspective, I was like, man, this is a masterpiece. So those games
Yeah.
were, yeah, really influential on me. So obviously it's funny, I played a lot of like platformers, but I haven't made a platformer or even really want to. But and then yeah, moving on from that, like I went from Super Nintendo to, a lot of my friends had a Nintendo 64, and I didn't. I still have the Super
Hmm.
Nintendo, and then I saw a demo of something for PlayStation 1. I think it was like the
Yeah.
Toy Story game, or no, not Toy Story. I think it was Ants or Bugs Life. It was a Bugs Life. And I
Yeah.
thought, whoa, this looks amazing. So I got a PlayStation 1 hand-me-down from a cousin again, and played games like Driver, Worms Armageddon. I moved on to the PlayStation 1, which again was a big influence for me. Yeah,
Hmm.
Metal Gear Solid, Driver, Worms Armageddon. Yeah, there was a whole bunch of games on the PlayStation 1 that I really enjoyed. Crash Bandicoot, Tomb Raider. That was my first sort of real foray into 3D games, and seeing what
Hmm.
games in 3D could look like and play like. So yeah, that was definitely very influential for me.
Yeah. Um, did you play the Tony Hawk games?
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that. Yes, I did. I
Like,
loved the
even
Tony
the
Hawk
game that
games.
you made, like, surely you
Yeah,
played them, right?
yeah. Funnily enough, like I didn't play Tony. I played it actually on PC of all things. It's definitely much more
Hmm.
suited to a console, but I played it on the PC a lot. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 was the one that I played the most, and that had a massive influence on me, both from a game design perspective, but I also skateboarded as a younger kid as well. So that sort of culture and the music as well. I think a lot of people my age are similar, where they're sort of their personality is built around the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater soundtrack. But there's,
Yeah.
yeah, I still listen to songs from that soundtrack today. And yeah, the design of that game and sort of the secrets that you find and the little hidden items to find and just the little bits of like the humor and the cutscenes of, I think in the first game, you like dunk the manager of the steel mill or like just like
Yeah.
kind of slapstick stuff that really stuck with me. I think, yeah, as a kid playing a game like that and then hearing someone say, oh, if you do X, Y, and Z and then this funny thing happens, and then the satisfaction, the payoff when you're a player and you try that and it works.
Mm.
And like, yeah, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 was the one I played the most. And that, for instance, there's like skate heaven or skate hell, I think it's called, a secret level. And then if you do a trick
Yep.
into the volcano, it does something. And there's a light post that if you grind the little stump that it's holding it up, it falls and breaks a fence and like opens up this hidden area. And that like sense of discovery and like secret hidden stuff was always a huge draw for me when playing games. And Tony
Mm.
Hawk's Pro Skater definitely had a lot of that, coupled with a great soundtrack and skateboarding, which I loved as well. So it was kind of like
Yeah.
it was made for me as a young boy.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so good. And so you messed around as a kid. How did you go? And then you discovered Unity at uni. How
Yes.
did you go from, did you study game design or did you just do it as like a secondary thing?
Yeah. So again, I have to thank another cousin for that because coming out of high school, I didn't even really consider games as a career path. I thought that there was just people who made games and they did it.
Yeah.
And, I kind of assumed it was this really hard sort of sphere or community to get into. So I was planning on studying screen production, huge fan
Mhm.
of movies and making, again, skateboarding with my friends. We'd make little film clips and videos of us skating. The next logical step was I wanted to get into film production. And so I was about to submit my application for my screen production course at university. And another cousin of mine sent me a message and was like, hey, I saw this ad for Murdoch University are doing like a games art course. And I was like, oh, I didn't know that was a thing. So I instantly went back to my application and swapped over all my my units from screen production into games art and design, it was called.
Mhm.
And it was still relatively new at the time. This was 2011 I started university.
Yep.
And so I still did like a minor in screen production with my other units. Yeah, studied at university for games art and design at Murdoch, which was a 3-year course.
Awesome. And so did you always want to make your own games or was the goal to like get a job in game development or something like that?
The goal was always to make my own.
Yeah.
I wanted to work in games as well. Like
Mhm.
I knew that making my own games wasn't sort of something I could just start doing straight away. I
Yeah.
knew that I'd have to have a job, and that's why I'm a solo developer, because I have ideas that I want to do. I
Yeah.
love working on other people's games, but ultimately my goal is I have these ideas that I want to work on and get out there. But if I can also work on other people's games to earn money to then support myself in
Yeah.
doing the solo projects, I'd do that as well. So I had studied at Murdoch. I met one of my lecturers, Josh Whitkin, who's like an old legend in the games industry. He worked on like Lego Island, like games that I
Yeah.
played as a kid. And he sort of became a bit of a mentor for me, and he was working on his PhD, and part of that had a game development aspect of it. So I started working for him as like a research assistant and sort of
Mhm.
developing small games with him, which really helped. So that was my first sort of games job. And then when I graduated, I sent out an application to every single games company I could find in Western
Yeah.
Australia, which even at the time was surprisingly quite a few, like really
Mhm.
small companies. But I was able to get a job working as an artist at Black Lab Games,
Mhm.
working on a game called Starhammer 2. And then they were able to get the license to Battlestar Galactica, and I worked as lead on Battlestar Galactica Deadlock, which was a great
Mhm.
project to work on. But unfortunately, because the industry isn't very big in Western Australia, I was working on these games as like projects, but then the project would finish and
Yeah.
I wouldn't have anything to do. So I needed something a bit more stable. So I ended up working for a company called Sentient, which is a software company that uses games technology, so uses Unity and Unreal, but
Mhm.
for training and visualization purposes for, you guessed it, the mining industry, being in WA,
Yeah.
but other industries too, like, medical, education,
Yeah.
oil and gas. But that was a way to sort of still use the skills that I learned in university, but do it on a day-to-day job that had, like sick leave and fortnightly
A
income,
regular
like,
paycheck.
yeah, yeah. Which was important to me even at the time when I didn't have a house and kids, which now I do have. So it's even more important to have that
Yeah.
consistency. So, and I still work there now full time for the moment. And every now and then I'll work on another project and reduce my hours a bit and we sort of work it out. But for the most of the time, it's my consistent income. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that is very common from
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
any interaction I've had. Like, even having something in the same kind of vein where you're using your skills is probably rare
Yeah, yeah,
from
and I'm
like a
lucky
9
in
to
that
5.
regard. And in a way, because what we do is different enough from games, it's almost kind of better in that when I'm using the skills and technology that I like using for games every day, but it's not specifically on games. So when I
Yep.
come home and do my game stuff, it doesn't feel like I'm just working, a
Yeah.
12-hour day on the same job. It's different enough that
Yeah.
there is kind of a little bit of a disconnect, but similar enough to still keep me engaged. So I am really lucky in terms of the job I was able to find, because I know a lot of people, and you would know them too, where games are their passion and then during the day they're working some shitty job that they don't like, but they just need the money,
Yeah.
So I'm lucky that
Yeah.
that's not my case.
Yeah, no, it does sound like you've got a good setup there, which is nice. It's nice when you have like a work environment that kind of supports what you
Mm.
want to do, I guess. Is
Yeah, and
probably yeah.
the company I work for are hugely supportive of, and
Yeah.
I'm not the only one at the company that also makes games as well. There's a lot of game
That's so cool.
developers there,
Yeah.
and they don't mind if we come in early or stay late and work on our own projects on the computers there. Like they're very encouraging of us, because they know that creative drive that we have is also what helps fuel our projects that we work on, and
Yeah.
helps, us with that experience and that passion to put into our everyday work as well.
Yeah.
So I think incubating that passion and that knowledge is beneficial for both of us. So yeah, very lucky in that regard.
Yeah. That's so good. So you've just recently released Pie in the Sky was your first game, wasn't it? Your first solo game?
It wasn't my first solo game. So I've released 3 games as a solo developer, but
Yeah.
they've all sort of been bigger experiences than the one before. So the first
Yeah.
one was called Undercrawl, and it was a mobile game that was essentially my first test in, like, I just want to finish a small game,
Yeah. Yeah.
get it onto mobile, because that seemed like the easiest platform to release on at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then that came out, and I was happy with that game. And then the second one was Dungeon Merchant, which started as just a mobile game. But then I
Mm-hmm.
thought, hey, I need to learn how to release on Steam. Like that's,
Yeah.
a good next step is to get a game out there on Steam on a massive marketplace. So I ported that to Steam as well,
Mm-hmm.
and released that. And then, yeah, Pie in the Sky, I guess, was my first sort of big project designed for Steam first.
Yeah.
And yeah, with each of my games that I've released, I sort of had like a goal in terms of what I wanted to learn and measure as a
Yeah.
success. And with Pie in the Sky, it was two main goals actually. It started with one, which was I wanted to learn how to do marketing myself and how to market a
Yeah.
game properly, because that was something that my previous games lacked. I didn't have any marketing, so they just sort of went out there and didn't really do much.
Yeah.
So with Pie in the Sky, I really wanted to test out doing my own sort of marketing through social
Mm-hmm.
media. And then what ended up being halfway through production was I got picked up by a publisher. So the
Yeah.
second goal with Pie in the Sky ended up being, how do I work with a publisher and what does that process and experience like as well, because I knew in the future I might end up working with publishers.
Hmm.
And here's the sort of test case, like, is it worth it? What would I do different? That sort of thing. So yeah, the goal with Pie in the Sky, as well as to make a good game, which is always the
Yeah.
goal number one. But the secondary objectives were learn how to do marketing, and learn how to work with a publisher. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's such a cool way of looking at things, especially when, like, often your sales numbers or whatever, a lot of it's out of your control. Like, yeah, you
Yeah.
can nail everything and it can still, flop, whatever you
Yeah.
define flop as. But so looking at it kind of with like, no, my measures of success are to learn how this works or to do this process. I think that's such a cool way of looking at game design, whilst obviously still making something that you want to make, of course.
Yeah. I think it's something that I think I would encourage other developers to do as well, is not look at your measurements of success in strictly like, oh, I'm going to sell 1 million units and
Yeah.
that's going to earn enough money for me to do this full time. And I see a lot of developers sort of pour their heart and soul and even money into their first project, and then it doesn't sell how they think it was going to sell. And then
Mhm.
they, you know, give up, or they feel like they've failed, or they feel like, my game wasn't good enough. But you can release, as you know, like an amazing game, and
Mhm.
it doesn't hit the right market, or it's there's so many other factors that might not necessarily mean it sells well. But the valuable thing is that you learnt that process of releasing that
Yeah.
game, and you take what you learnt into the next project. I think that's a lot of smaller indie developers don't do as well, is that they give up after one project, or they
Mm.
think like this is going to be it, and then it doesn't work. Like you need it, if you look at any sort of like filmmaker or band with albums, or a game developer, their best one wasn't their first one most of the time, apart
No.
from 1 in a million. They've
Yeah.
mastered their craft over many releases. And I think that's the perspective that a lot of indie devs need to focus more on. But I
Mm.
understand, though, it's hard because you're so passionate about this idea that you have,
Yeah.
um, that it it feels almost disingenuous to work on something that isn't your grandiose big plan or big
Yeah.
idea, but that's a means to an end to allow you to keep doing what you love doing. Yeah.
With the marketing focus, what did you learn? I feel like
I
there's a
learned
lot
that
of people who
marketing
are
is
going to
really
be
hard.
interested in this.
And, there's a lot of marketing. I have a kind of a jaded perspective, I guess, on marketing, where I hear people who work in
Yeah.
marketing and they talk like they know exactly how to crack it and like exactly what you need to do. And I kind of think they're full of shit, because I don't think
I
anyone,
agree.
if you knew exactly what to do, like, then everyone would do it that same way. I think marketing and the
Yeah.
way consumers are consuming media now through social media and through scrolling through feeds, and what I think the landscape is changing so rapidly that no one really has a solid strategy. There's no formula to like going viral. There's steps
Mm.
you can do to increase your chances, but it's not a surefire, strategy to work. So yeah, the thing I learned was that, yeah, it's hard. It takes a lot of time. I knew that from the beginning.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it was more time. It's hard because you want to just make games, right? And I was working on my game until late, and then being like, shit, I got to finish a video for TikTok to release
Mhm.
tomorrow. And it felt like just putting out one video a week was a huge effort. And then I'm hearing people online being like, you need to be releasing like videos daily. And I'm like, when am I going to make the game? It's like,
Yeah.
yeah. But it was interesting. Yeah, I learned a lot through the marketing. I learned that it's hard to do on your own while also making a game. And that's part of the reason why I signed with a publisher, to help with that
Mhm.
marketing, because, and also, yeah, the timing can also just be really random. Like, I think, unfortunately, one of my posts that was on TikTok, and I've reposted it to Reddit and stuff, didn't go viral, but it got massive amounts of numbers. And it ended up on a couple of really popular websites, but the timing was really bad in that I didn't have a Steam page yet. And I didn't have, a
Yeah.
landing page to
You
convert
didn't
those
have like
clicks
a
into
call to
sales or
action.
wish lists.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and so looking back, I'm like, if that post had have gone semi-viral later, just when I had my Steam page and people could convert to wish lists, like it could have been a completely different story.
Yeah.
The other thing I learned as well was that you feel I started feeling like I was annoying people with my marketing, even though I was posting once a week, which is still not
Yeah.
that often. And then I think one of I slowly started to learn, like, no, I'm not annoying people. Like, for every one person who posts on Reddit, who comments on Reddit saying, stop shilling your shitty game, like you keep posting about this, there's 100 other people who are like, oh, I didn't know that this existed. This is great. Like, thanks for
Yeah.
sharing.
Yeah.
So you just ignore those people. But also you can post the same content multiple times. And I think one week I hadn't prepared a video and I thought, ah, shit, I still need to post something. And I think I just posted the same video I posted last week or something. And then it did like 10 times the numbers of the previous week due to
Yeah.
timing or whatever. And I thought, oh,
Yeah.
that was way easier than I thought it would be. So yeah, I guess, like, I don't want to be too negative about marketing, but I think there's a huge random factor. It's really hard. No one really knows exactly how to make it work. That's also not to minimize the work that people who work in marketing do. Like, they know all of this stuff and more. And I definitely don't know everything about marketing now since that experience. But I think it's just, you end up implementing strategies that give you a slightly better percent chance of getting your name out there from a really low percentage to a slightly less low percentage.
Yeah. And then occasionally you'll just get that one that just does well, and you're like, okay, cool.
And you just got to keep putting yourself out there. And that's the other thing, what I was saying before about people giving up after one game is like, it's a numbers game. If you keep releasing games, you're increasing your chances of one of them being picked up by some streamer or some post going viral, or, you if you're not constantly putting something out there, you're just, you're not increasing your chances at all.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that can actually be a really good way to build your, what's it called? It's like rejection tolerance or something. There's some word for it. I can't remember what it is, but essentially, like, having things do bad can build that tolerance. So then when you do release a game and it doesn't do exactly as you expected or hoped for, then it doesn't sting quite so much.
Yeah. And I think, it goes without saying that you need some level of resilience as well when it comes to receiving feedback online. You're going to get dickheads who, don't understand. I had one person comment on a Pie in the Sky video saying that they said it's clearly a bunch of Unity assets from the asset store slapped together. And I'm like, okay, this took me like 2 years to make all of the assets, apart from maybe like one or two I hand modeled myself. Like, you don't understand. But there will always be people like that. They're just, and you can't listen to that,
No, of course not. My favorite thing to do when, like, particularly on YouTube, if you get a comment from someone being like, your videos are crap, or like, you need to do this, or like, that unsolicited advice, I always click on their profile, and then you're like, dude, you have like 5 subscribers and haven't posted a single video. Like, what are you talking about?
I also like killing them with kindness as well. Like, just commenting and be like, thank you so much for your feedback, because I find that then other people see that comment and they think that's kind of funny. Like, I don't know. And it shows your resilience as well. Like, there's no point in clapping back and being like, oh, you asshole, I worked on this and blah, 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 and getting all angry, because then you just look like, it's not actually getting anywhere.
It's not worth
No,
your energy.
I quite like actually now commenting on like hate comments with positivity and being like, oh, I've taken your feedback on board,
Oh, it's so good. I had one last week on a review video, and someone was like, so the game is good, but you're just a YouTuber, so I'm blocking your videos. And I'm like,
what are you here for?
I'm posting on YouTube, so anyone posting on YouTube is a YouTuber? Like, what do you want from me? So
also, you're watching the video,
funny.
like,
what? So I think I commented back some wave emojis like, all right, see you later.
Yeah, see ya.
Okay, no harm to me. It's always fun when you can laugh at that kind of thing too, I think.
Oh,
Like it's
yeah.
such
You
a
have to. Yeah.
better way, yeah, to be able to take it. So Pie in the Sky released this year, just a couple of
Yes.
months ago. It's
hmm
already been a couple of months. Wow.
Yep.
This year has gone so fast. So what was it like releasing Pie in the Sky? Because has this been your longest project, would you say?
Yeah, this has been my longest
Yeah.
project. The plan was to work on it for a year,
Mm-hmm.
but I got to almost the year point and my marketing wasn't where I wanted it in terms of like wish list counts. And that's when the publisher approached me. And their strategy was, let's go another year
Mm-hmm.
of marketing, and they did a bunch of like QA and testing and optimizing the Steam page store and
Yeah.
getting it into events and articles and stuff like that. So I had a year to basically finish the last little bits of content and polish and test, which was really beneficial. I didn't want to work
Mm-hmm.
on it for 2 years. That's too long for me personally, but
Yeah.
it's what was needed to give the game its best chance.
Mm-hmm.
But releasing it was, yeah, super exciting, a little bit stressful. Again, the wish lists weren't at a point where I knew, oh, this game's going to make me $1 million and change my life. But they were
Yeah.
at a point where it was like, this could go either way. This could be a huge turning point for me in my career, or it could be, it could just not sell anything. And then I'm back to where I was before. And
Mm-hmm.
it kind of landed more on the where I was before side, but not that dramatic.
Yeah.
It did okay. And the great thing about working with the publisher is that they're also continuing to give it to streamers, put it in
Yeah.
events, advertise it. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that they're doing post-release that I don't have to worry about. I can focus on, fixing bugs or porting it to mobile or working on the next
Yeah.
project sort of thing. So, and who knows, like it might be picked up. It's the perfect game, and it was kind of designed in this way for a streamer to play and have funny interactions with the game. So I'm
Yeah.
hoping one day some bigger streamer or YouTuber is able to play it and it gets kind of a resurgence in popularity, which we've seen before with games like
Yeah.
Among Us was out for like 2 years before. I think it was 2 years before it like blew up and became the biggest game ever. Not saying that
Yeah.
my game's gonna do that, but you just never
Well,
know
you
what's
never
gonna
know.
happen. But yeah, releasing it was super exciting, and it was really nice seeing, because of the time difference of the publisher being in the US, I had to release it kind of an awkward, I think it was 10 p.m. at night Perth time,
Yeah.
but I knew a lot of my friends and family wanted to play it and review it as soon as it came out. So I appreciate them sort of staying up late and doing that. And yeah, seeing the reviews come in from not only friends and family, but from just random people online who really got the game and really understood
Yeah.
what it was trying to be was super rewarding.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, and the release was really smooth as well. And that's, again, thanks to the amount of QA and testing the publisher did and the extra year long for me to polish and really test. There was
Yeah.
really minimal bugs on release, which any game
That's
developer
awesome.
knows that's like the most stressful thing when you release it
Yeah.
out there and then day one, someone's like, hey, I got a bug that breaks the whole game. And then you're frantically trying to release a patch before you
Yeah.
get negative reviews on Steam, which happened to me with Dungeon Merchant.
Yeah.
When that game came out, I tested it hundreds of times myself, but there was some bug that I wasn't getting that was preventing an
Mhm.
achievement. And before I knew it, there was, 10 or so negative reviews from people saying, hey, the achievements
Yeah.
are bugged. And I was frantically trying to fix it, couldn't fix it. It went into the mixed,
Yeah.
what's the word? Yeah, the
Uh,
mixed review
Yeah.
category.
Yeah.
And then Steam stops pushing it to the front page, and then, sales tanked. So
Yeah.
I'm really grateful that was not what happened with Pie in the Sky. The release was really smooth. There was a
Yeah.
couple of little bugs here and there, which I fixed. A couple of, I was watching the community forums and looking for feedback, and there was a couple of things that people kept coming back and being like, hey, we'd really want like a reticle to see where you're aiming when you swoop. I remember thinking, okay, that's not too hard to add in. So added that in as a patch, and people, responded well to that. And it's still sitting on 100% positive reviews of like 70,
That's
I
so
think.
good.
So yeah,
Yeah.
that's an achievement in itself. Like I couldn't have asked for apart from more sales, I couldn't have asked for a better launch in
Yeah.
terms of response. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. We probably should actually talk about what the game is for those who don't know. So
True.
tell us how you got started with Pie in the Sky and what the game is about.
So the game is essentially Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, but you are an Australian magpie. And instead of doing tricks to rack up your combo, you're stealing food, swooping people, and pooping on them with said food. So, and flying through gaps and that sort of thing. So it's kind of a love letter to Tony Hawk's Pro Skater games and games from the sort of early 2000s. In both its design and its aesthetic. And so the idea came about when I was walking home from work and I saw some magpies flying around, and like, I've been swooped by magpies, my kids have been swooped by magpies. It's just a common thing in Australia. And I thought, like, has anyone made a game like that before? And because I was thinking, I think I was also playing like Untitled Goose Game at the time and Goat Simulator, and these sort of silly games where you're an animal that's causing chaos are super fun. I thought, well, no animal causes more chaos than a magpie, like
Yeah.
swooping kids at a park, that sort of thing. And that whole idea in my head I thought was just hilarious. And I thought, okay, how can it be a game? Like, how can it be more fun than simply just swooping people? And I thought, oh, well, if you swoop someone and you get them in the groin, that's worth more points than the back. And then, okay, well, if you steal some food, that could keep a combo going. And I thought about Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, and I thought, okay, that's the idea. So I immediately, that night after I got home from work, I worked on a prototype until like 1 a.m. And I had like a little bird flying around and
Yeah.
posted a little dev update on TikTok and Instagram and stuff. So that's how the idea started. And originally the idea was that the levels would be broken into different phases. There'd be like a phase where you'd get food for your babies. And then there'd be a phase where you would steal shiny objects or something. I can't remember. And then I liked the idea of magpies remember faces really well.
Mm.
And the original idea was that the people, the humans around would try and hit you or knock you out of the sky, and you would remember their face, and there would be like a hit list on the side of the screen. And then
Yeah.
phase 3 was going to be swooping those people and sort of crossing off the targets on the list. And then eventually I realized that I didn't need to split into phases. You just could just do all 3. And then, I just loved the level design in Tony Hawk's Pro Skater of like hidden objects, hidden air, objectives that were, you knew what the objective was, but the instructions were a little unclear, so you had to kind of experiment to figure it out. So the first level I worked on was the beach level, which I thought was like a perfect mix of like, there's a car park, there's people surfing, there's a water hazard, there's, cafes and buildings nearby. There's all these elements that work well together. And the first sort of like semi-vague objective was to drop sunscreen on some bathers, which people always misinterpret as just pooping on them, which in hindsight, I realize that makes sense. But I wanted to be able to pick up objects and drop them on people.
Yeah.
And so that was the first test of that. It was picking up bottles of sunscreen, dropping them on people who are laying on the beach. And the game just sort of evolved from there.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a iconic Australian kind of concept, I think. With a bit of that chaos kind of element that we do see in a lot of games nowadays in particular. So, it's definitely a solid theme.
And I also, I wanted to work on this game. I have like a spreadsheet of game ideas. And this isn't the ultimate game that I want to make. This isn't like my best idea or my most, game that I'm most passionate about. But I looked at my goals, which were I want to learn how to do marketing, and I wanted to make a game that was fairly low scope that could potentially be successful and could go viral with streamers. So this was the sort of concept sort of ticked all the boxes at the time of what I think the most logical next release would be from me. So that kind of influenced my decision in what to do. And I also looked to see if there were any games that were similar. And there is one magpie swooping game that was released by a guy called Rowan, who I'm now friends with, called Swoopy Boy. And it was a 2D, almost, I'm not sure if it was Flash, but it was that kind of style game. And I actually reached out to him and I was like, hey, I want to make the next Magpie game. What are your thoughts? Because I'm not trying to rip you off, but, I just thought I'd reach out and sort of get him to pass the mantle of give me the blessing of the next Magpie game. And so that was great talking to him about that game and about his game, Dog You Don't Care, which I think
Yeah.
you've covered as well, which again,
Oh yeah.
an Australian solo developer, cheeky animal getting up to no good.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely something about that
So much
formula that we
chaos.
both like.
Yeah.
And that game's amazing as well. I love that game, and I wish him all the best with Dog You Don't Care.
Yeah, I think you and Rowan being friends makes my heart happy because, but that's like, in my experience, indie developers definitely lean more on that side. Like, if you reach out to someone, they're like, "Oh yeah, absolutely, that's such
Yeah.
a cool idea. Here's all the research I did and blah blah blah." Like, people are so lovely, and it's just like, yeah, I would say don't ever be afraid to reach out to developers in my experience because they're all so nice.
Yeah, I know, and they're also going to give you, advice or their experience,
Yeah.
And so it was great, talking to Rowan about how he transitioned from, Swoopy Boy to
Mhm.
Doggy Don't Care and what he was planning with that. And he was doing some really good stuff with marketing as well, which I took on board.
Mm.
And then eventually I went to, I think it must have been PAX or GCAP or something, and we were able to meet in person.
Yeah.
That was really awesome, seeing him in person,
Yeah.
being like, hey, you're the guy who made the Magpie game, the first one, and now I'm making the second one. And
Yeah.
it was great sort of like sharing stories about our development process. And that's something that I love about indie game developers that I guess you can't get as much if you're just working as, say, an artist or something at a AAA studio, is that, they're generally really friendly and willing to share and help each other out because we're all in the same boat, like, trying to
Yeah.
get a game out there. And there isn't, we're not in competition with each other because we're competing with like a million other people in the world who are trying to release games,
Exactly.
so we might as well, learn
Yeah.
from each other's experiences and lift each other up.
Yeah.
And especially, like, I think that cultural identity as well of being in Australia as well,
Yeah.
of being like, oh yeah, you're also, a solo dev from Australia. We're trying to just make good games. What can we do to get our content out there? And that's why things like, the Indie Brew are great as well, is that you guys are recognizing that and uplifting us, and like, you're not getting anything out of it. Like you just have a passion for games, and that's, really appreciated. And I think it's telling of the sort of culture around indie games, is that everyone's trying to help
Yeah.
each other out.
I think so. I think, like, especially in Australia and New Zealand, like, the culture around indie games is just so lovely and wholesome, and like, there's no gatekeeping, there's no anything like that. Everyone's just so nice and friendly. It's really
Yeah.
weird.
But it makes me, proud to hear that,
Yeah.
you want that to hear that about your
Yeah, of
community and your
course.
culture. And with the New Zealand games as well, like, I love going over to PAX and seeing the sort of, I think Code NZ usually have like a
Yeah.
showcase of the Kiwi games that are there. And again, they're sort of, our cousins across the pond,
Yeah.
so to speak. They share a similar cultural identity, and I love seeing everything that, because combined, I think Australia and New Zealand, the games that we're making, I don't really like the term like punching above our weight. Like,
Yeah.
we are game developers that make good games. Like,
We're just
we're not like an
punching.
underdog. It's
Yeah.
like we're just punching.
Yeah, we're just punching.
And some of the stuff that we come up with, whether it's, pie in the sky that represents something very purely Australian, or a game that's completely not related to Australia, there's just good creative content coming out of our countries that I think,
Mm.
the rest of the world deserves to see and enjoy. And we're getting there, I think. I think
Yeah.
people aren't looking at us as this low population little island down there. We're, pretty big players when it comes to the Australian game development
Yeah,
community and industry.
absolutely. Yeah, I think there are some ridiculously good games coming out of Australia over the past couple of years. It's yeah, it's ridiculous. It's actually ridiculous, the talent. So it's nice to be a part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. All right. So what has been the most surprising part of game dev so far, would you say?
I was thinking about this question before the podcast because I was really struggling to come up with an answer. I mean, there's lots of
Yeah.
things that are surprising just because of the nature of learning something new.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
an artist by trade first, and then I learnt programming later. So for me, programming is one of those things where um, there's something I think would be really hard, and then I'm like, oh, okay, it's actually not that hard. Or there's something I think would be
Yeah.
really easy, and then I'm like, whoa, why is this so hard and such a
Yeah.
big deal to implement? So there's
Yeah.
lots of things that are surprising, but I think the most surprising thing, which I should be used to by now, but the most surprising thing for me is how people play your games and interpret your games. You can test it 1,000 times, yourself or in a group of friends or in a QA team, and then you'll see someone play it and they're playing it completely different to how you expected them to play it, or they're asking for a particular feature that you never thought would be a good idea. And then you've got 10 people asking for the same idea. And you kind of have to step back and think like, even though I'm the developer and I know about game design, consumers are asking for it, then there's a need for it. You can't ignore that.
Yeah.
I think that's always the most surprising thing to me, is that sometimes people will ask for a change or a feature that you as a designer think like, why the hell would you do that? But then you do it and you're like, oh, okay, you know what?
Yeah.
That's probably a good idea. Or maybe you didn't
Makes
think it was a good
sense.
idea, but your audience likes it. And yeah, nothing will surprise you more than releasing a game to the wild and seeing what people do with it, which can be really exciting and
Yeah.
hilarious. It can also be extremely frustrating,
Yeah.
but that's just the nature of game development. And when you put something out there to that many people, like, people will surprise you with what they do with the game and what they ask for. But yeah, it's also an exciting part of it too.
Yeah, for sure. Did you ever show Pie in the Sky physically at like an expo or anything?
Yes, a couple of different things. We had like a very small event in Perth at the museum that there was like they did an expo at the museum around different aspects of game development, and Pie in the Sky was
Mhm.
one of the games that I showed there. That was the first time seeing young kids play it in person,
Yeah.
which was really interesting and valuable as well, because I knew that my target audience, even though it was mostly aimed at people my age because of the nostalgia factor of the games it was designed to represent, I
Yeah.
knew also I wanted it to be appealing to kids as well. So that was really interesting, seeing kids play it for the first time. And then it was also at South by Southwest Sydney.
Mhm.
Was it last year or the year before? I can't remember. Unfortunately, I couldn't get flights to go over in person, but they had some
Yeah.
volunteers running a booth, so they sent me some photos and videos of people playing it there. So that was pretty cool. But yeah, only physically in a couple of spaces. I'd love to do more spaces. I'm hoping to get a booth at PAX this year to show off the game,
Yeah.
but a lot of the time it comes down to cost and time. Like, I'm busy, making the game, and then unless it's a event in Perth, travel time and away from my kids and
Yeah.
job and stuff like that, it's just hard to manage. But I'd love to do more in-person events for sure.
Yeah. I can imagine it would be an interesting experience watching people like over their shoulder play the game. That's why I asked. I'm like, oh, that would be really interesting to
It
see
is
how different people
interesting.
play. Yeah.
It's a really, I'd recommend anyone making games actually do that. Like, the difference between someone just playing the game that's sending you their feedback online or whatever versus watching them physically play it is massive. I mean, a lot of people have this advice, but seeing what they're doing, what they're getting frustrated with, even things like with watching the kids play, seeing their hand placement. So, for example, the first iterations of Pie in the Sky, I didn't have. I wanted to make the game as simple as possible for kids to play, or people who don't play games often to
Yeah.
play. And I wanted the whole game, similar to the original Tony Hawk's games, to be controlled with one thumbstick or the D-pad. Just your left
Mhm.
hand controls the movement. The camera follows behind. You don't have to worry about the camera. Because in my mind, I thought kids are going to get confused with the camera. People who don't play games are going to get confused with the camera. Just keep all the controls to the left stick. And then I watched kids play at the museum, and every single one of them was moving the right stick and being like, why can't I move the camera up and down? Why can't I look
Yeah.
around? And they were getting so frustrated. And I
Mhm.
thought it was, and again, the thing that surprises you about people playing is that I had a wrong assumption about kids that they would not want to use a right thumbstick to look around, but they were actually, that was their first instinct was to do that. And then even, watching other people play and just seeing how they held the controller and what buttons they were pressing because they thought that that's what it was going to do. Like that sort of information is important. And then, and also being an observer, like I don't think I had a name badge or anything, so people didn't know I was the one who made the game straight away. So that was useful in that they're not trying to be polite because they shouldn't be. They need to give you their honest opinion. So that was quite valuable. And it was frustrating because you watch people, fly into the ground 100 times before you say, hey, you need to pull up to fly up, but you can go into the pause menu and invert the controls if you want. And they're like, nah. And then they keep flying into the ground. And then eventually, out of frustration, I've inverted the controls for them, and then they were fine. And then the next kid comes along and they fly into the ground because they prefer non-inverted controls. And, that's always going to be a problem. But you just need to observe and that is very valuable watching people play it in person and their body language and their facial expressions, seeing what parts they get excited about and what parts they get stuck on. And it's very valuable.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what have been some of the highlights, do you think, of your like whole development journey? So not just Pie in the Sky, but overarching, what have been some of the moments?
Oh, for my whole time making games.
Yeah.
I mean,
your whole life.
There's
really
specific, like when you see when people really get what you're trying to make, that's always really exciting. Like I definitely, in regards to Pie in the Sky, I definitely had people. I was aiming for a really specific aesthetic of like early 2000s PS2 GameCube kind of era. I think a lot of consumers, they recognize pixel art as being, they call it 8-bit, but it's not. It's like 16 or 32. But they recognize like pixel art, it's supposed to look old. And then now we're seeing a lot of games coming out in the PlayStation 1 era, like uncompressed textures, wobbly vertexes, low poly models. And they recognize that as like, oh, this isn't a shitty looking game. This is designed to look like a game for PS1.
It's designed to look like shit.
PS2 is like an awkward kind of era where it's not old enough for people to recognize it as being nostalgic. So there was a lot of people who saw the game and thought, you're just bad at art, or like you just, made this game really quickly and took shortcuts, rather than it being a specific aesthetic choice. So going back to what the highlights were was when I saw people playing it, like streamers and stuff like that, or I saw reviewers that were like, this feels like I'm playing a PS2 game. And like, I even saw some streamers where people would be like, oh, like what PS2 game is this? Like, I hadn't seen this game before. And then I also had a streamer was playing it and they were like, oh, it's from this developer. They made this. I think it's in Unity. And then someone commented to be like, it's not in Unity. This is a mod of Tony Hawk's Underground or something. Like they were adamant that I'd modded a PS2 game rather than making it from scratch. So when I saw that, I was like, okay, I've nailed the aesthetic and the feeling there. Because if someone mistakes this for a PS2 game, then I've done my job. So the moments where like, and you got to focus on as I said before, for every comment of someone just not getting it and not liking it, even if there's more negative comments than positive ones, you look at the positive one where that person really got it and understood what you're going for, and that's really rewarding. The other highlight, and again, this is for Pie in the Sky, was a few posts of mine went, not viral, but like got a lot of attention on Reddit and stuff like that. And occasionally I would have conversations about with people that I was meeting, in like, not even within game dev communities, just like out socially, out with my wife, like meeting friends or whatever. And they'd say, oh, like, what do you do? I'm like, oh, I'm working in a software company, but I do games on the side. And then they'd be like, oh, what game are you working on? Oh, I'm working on this game where you play as a magpie. And they'd be like, oh, Pie in the Sky, you're making the magpie game. And I'd be like, yeah. And they're like, oh, like I was just showing my friend a post, and when it organically enters other people's lives and then you're able to talk to them, like, that's really rewarding to like feel like something that you're making is a big deal or is like viewed as important by other people, even when they don't know who you are. Like they're not, I love the support from my friends and family when they share, posts and stuff like that. but it means a lot to me that they do that. But when some random person does it, you know that it's
Yeah.
working, it's getting out there. So that's rewarding. And then, one highlight I can definitely remember from all the way back from my first release with Undercrawl, which was a mobile game. Again, I was working at Sentient, and there was a time where I'd sent out a copy of the game to everyone at work to test and give
Yeah.
me feedback. And I sat down in the lunchroom one day and I was eating my lunch and I looked up and there was about 8 people in the room and every single one of them was playing the game. And they were all like looking at their phones and
Yeah.
like trying to beat each other's high scores. And it wasn't like I said to them, like, oh, everyone at lunch today, we're all going to play it and we're all going to compare scores and whatever. Like they just naturally, they wanted to do that in their spare time. And that meant a lot to me, seeing them, genuinely enjoying the game that I'd made. Yeah. The highlights are always definitely when people see what you're going for and they really understand it. And then, it's a nice reminder that what you're doing is important and that people really enjoy it.
Yeah. I think particularly when you're making something with the intention of someone playing it and enjoying it, seeing someone playing it and enjoying it would
Who would have
feel
thought? That's
rewarding. So let's talk about some of the challenges. We know there's lots of challenges in game dev life. So what have been some of the ones that have either been the worst or have stood out as something that was challenging?
So obviously making games is hard. Everyone should know that. People who are working games know that. People who are thinking about working in games should know that it's really hard. So those challenges will always be there in terms of, there's just a lot of work that goes into making games. But the challenges for me, I think, like as I've said before, I work full time on a job that's not games, and I have 2 kids as well that are in primary school. So being a dad takes a lot of time. Working full time takes a lot of time. I also think it's important to maintain a good, social life and spend time with my wife. So my time is just stretched really thin. So I think the big challenge for me is just scheduling that time to be able to do all of those different things. And I think I've done a pretty good job of managing that. I've seen a lot of solo devs or indie developers who work full time and then work on their games really burn themselves out because they're, working crazy hours every day and they're not seeing their friends and family. And then they're getting depressed because of that. And it's this really vicious cycle because it is challenging to manage that time. Thankfully, I feel like I've been able to manage that well. And also part of the reason I've been able to do that is managing the scope of the game as well, keeping it within a reasonable amount that I don't need to work on it, 8 hours a day to get it done. It's like, a couple of hours here and there, be efficient with your time and get it out. The other challenge, which is really common among indie and solo developers, is staying focused on the same project. I started a challenge with a few years ago with a group of friends for us to all complete a game development challenge by Christmas next year. I think it was Christmas that we started it. So it was a year-long challenge. We're all just going to make a really small scope game and get it done. I think I was the only one who finished a game. And I pivoted like once, like halfway through. I realized the game I was working on, I wasn't that passionate about. I had a new idea. And that's, I think, the biggest challenge of creative people who are able to make games is that you have a great idea and it seems like the best idea at the time and you start working on it and then the next idea comes up and you think, oh, actually, no, that's the best idea. And then you work on a prototype for that and then you get 2 months into that and you think, oh, I just had this really good idea. I think that's a better idea. And then you never actually end up finishing anything. Very relatable, I think, to anyone listening who's worked in games. And that's a really hard thing to suppress. And I'm guilty of it too. Like, I think there's a healthy level of working on a couple of things at a time so you can sort of bounce between and not get burnt out, but to not get distracted and to not, stop your production entirely and never finish the game, that's really hard. It's really hard to stay focused. And that's why I wanted to keep Pie in the Sky within a year and why it being stretched to 2 years I found quite difficult because I wanted to work on other things and move on and try new ideas, but I had to stick with it because otherwise it wouldn't get finished. And now I'm happy
Yeah.
that it's finished. I mean, there's still work to be done post-release, but that's one of the biggest challenges, is to not chase the next shiny object, the
Yeah.
next
It
best
makes
idea.
me think of the, like, when someone reflects, like, the light off, like, your phone or something, and then it moves, it makes me
Yep.
think of that, like, the kid or the cat chasing the light that
Oh yeah,
reflects.
yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I don't want to like throw my friends under the bus, but I'm trying to think of how many pivots they've all done where, you ask them like, oh, how's your game going? And they're like, yeah, I'm not working on that one anymore. And they're like, what happened? It's like, oh, I got this new idea. And like, I do it as well.
Yeah.
I've got, a ton of prototypes, but I think the discipline you need to have is like, if you really have an idea that you want to get a prototype done and just get it out of the way, do it, spend like a night on it, and then put it on the back burner. Be like, okay, I've got that prototype ready to go. Next time I'm ready to work on that as an actual game, and then get back to
Yeah.
work on the actual things that you need to get out. Yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna say, how did you get through that? How did you manage that challenge of, staying focused? Was it doing that, building random prototypes to get the idea, like, out?
Yeah, I think that helps, but that's also like can be a slippery slope. Like when the
Yeah.
prototype starts turning into another game, and you think, "Shit, like what am I doing?"
Yeah.
And I think the group that we created, there's like a Discord group. Part of the reason we did that was to try and keep each other accountable as well.
Yeah.
Which, even though it didn't really work, I still think it's a good idea. In that, if you're
One of you released a game, so
yeah,
I
and
mean,
the others are still working on their games as well.
yeah.
And to be fair, a couple of them were also working on games before the challenge that they've since released those games. So they'd
Yeah.
still
Yeah.
achieved their goals. But part of it was that accountability. And I think that also helps in terms of my marketing strategy, where I was
Mm.
releasing videos every week. And now suddenly you've got an audience of people who are saying, when's it coming out? When's it coming out? And you kind of hold yourself accountable to those people being
Yeah.
like, oh, well, I can't, all these people who followed me who are excited about a release, I can't just post one day and be like, sorry, I'm not
Yeah.
making it anymore. I'm doing something else, So that's one way that I kept focused.
Yeah.
And the other strategy, which is just a good strategy in general, is just scheduling time.
Yeah.
Not being like, oh, I'll work on it when I get to it, because then you never do. Or you'll be like, oh, I've got some free time. Maybe I'll work on it. Oh, but I really want to work on this prototype. Instead, just setting a time. Like, so for me, it was every Wednesday night, my wife goes out or has dinner with her friends here, and she has like a scheduled night with a group of friends. And so on those nights, I will put the kids to bed. Once they're in bed, I've got, 3 or so hours to work on the
Yeah.
game. And, I'm not neglecting my wife because she's busy with her friends, like
Yeah.
we've got our scheduled time to do our own activities. And that was a good way to make sure that, Wednesday nights, I'm working on the game.
Yeah.
If I get free time throughout the week, I can work on the game, or I can play games, or I can work on some other prototype if I want to. But Wednesday night, just doing the game.
Yeah.
And that helps a lot. Like, once you sit down, you actually get into the flow of working on it. It's easy. It's just setting that time to actually sit down and do it. And I mean,
Yeah.
you probably experience that in what you do with you making all these videos and everything. Is like the hard part sometimes is just sitting down and just being like, okay, I'm doing
Yep.
this. Once you start doing it, it's okay.
Yep.
So
Exactly.
scheduling is important.
Yeah. Scheduling is 100% important. I have the advantage that videos are like a much shorter time frame, so I don't really get bored. I don't have that like shiny object syndrome, because a video, like, it's like the most amount of time I spend on a video is like maybe a week max.
Yeah,
If
that
that.
that is one of the downside of games, and why I encourage people to work on small scope games, because the smaller the scope, the smaller the achievable window of getting it done, the more likely you are to get it done. And even in comparison to industries like the movies, like, you can work on a script for a long time, but when it comes to shooting, you shoot for like a couple of weeks, and then you've got that footage, and then you edit it, and it's like the turnaround for the average movie is a lot faster than the turnaround for the average game. So maintaining that that level of passion and, what was the word?
Yeah, like motivation.
Motivation, that's the one. Yeah.
Yeah. It's all
Is difficult
motivation.
with games because the timeline is pretty long compared
Yeah.
to other mediums. And that's why I love drawing as well, and why I'm also not great at drawing, because I won't spend longer than like an hour on a drawing. Like
Yeah.
I'll do it it could look way better. I could be way better at drawing, but I'm like, once I've done it for an hour, I'm going to move on, draw something else.
Yeah.
That's why I'm not a good painter. I can't, spend
Yeah.
hours/days on one piece.
Yeah.
I'm like, nah,
No.
this needs to be done out of there.
Waiting for paint to dry. Literally. No, thank you.
Yeah, no.
I could not. So you've made Pie in the Sky. You're still
Mhm.
obviously doing post stuff, but are you working on your next game, even if you can't tell us about it yet?
Yeah, I am. So yeah, the next game. So yeah, as I said, I'm always working on lots of little prototypes and ideas as they come up, and I've got a spreadsheet of game ideas
I love that. Yeah.
that I also I have a column for like achievability and marketability, and then I sort based on those parameters so that the most viable next product is pushed to the top, even if it's not my favorite idea. But yeah, so the next one that I'm working on, I don't know how much I guess I don't have a publisher or anything, so I can say as much as I want. But I really want to work on a horror game. Horror for me is my favorite genre of film and kind of games as well.
Yeah.
It's something I think is really hard to do, but I would like to do it. And then I played a lot of games recently to sort of get into the mood for horror and see what they did well. So I recently finished Mouthwashing, which I really, really
Yeah.
enjoyed. I don't know if you've played that game.
I don't play horror, but I know of the game.
It's not, if spookiness is what's putting you off, it's not crazy scary. It's not like jump scares galore, amnesia kind of stuff. It's more about the intense sort of storytelling. And that's the other thing as well, is I haven't really released a game that tells a really good story. I think writing is something that I'm not very good at, so I've been hesitant to put story into games, but I'm not going to get better at it if I don't do it. So the next project is a horror game with a fairly in-depth story element to it, with some pretty heavy themes that I want to explore. And in terms of aesthetic, learning from Pie in the Sky, even though I feel like I did nail that 2000s aesthetic, I do really want to release a game that looks much more like the PlayStation 1 uncompressed textures, wobbly vertexes, kind of that almost like creepy cursed PS1 analog horror style that I know a lot of games have done, and I'm hoping that the genre doesn't just sort of like die in the process of me making this game, but I don't think it will.
You'll be fine.
So mechanically, I'm keeping the scope really low to allow for time to put into the sound design, the look, the writing, to present a much more sort of like heavy, which is such a huge contrast coming from Pie in the Sky, which is all like bright and fun and silly. And I even, it's not, completely out of the question, but I even thought about making like a drop bear simulator game, kind of like similar to Pie in the Sky, but you're a drop bear and it's more of like a stealth game where you're jumping from tree to tree and attacking tourists. Because that, in terms of a brand of my game development, would be a logical next step. But no, it's horror is where I want to go. So that's what the next project is I'm working on. I've started working on a bit of a prototype. I've applied for some funding from Screen West. So I'm yet to hear back from the pre-production fund application to see if I can get some funding for it. Because Pie in the Sky was done completely, funded by myself on outside hours, which I was able to manage, but I prefer to be able to subsidize at least, one day of my wage from my everyday job to just work on games. And that can free me up in the evenings and afternoons to spend more time with my kids and my friends and family and time to play games as well, which I think is really important. That's where the inspiration comes from. Like everyone, I've got a list of Steam games I've bought that I've never played, so I need to get through them at some point.
I don't want to look at my Steam library. I made the mistake of like sharing. We got family sharing going with my family, and we're all gamers. But my dad is a chronic Steam buyer. So no joke, our shared library has like 1,500 games in it or something ridiculous. And I'm like, no, thank you. I'm not looking
and then
at what I haven't played.
We're spoiled for choice these days, When I look at my Steam library of all these games that I haven't played, and then the hard part is just picking one to play. And you have the thing where if you play it for 10 minutes and you're not really into it, you have other options. So you tend to bounce off games faster. And it's It's a big problem.
It's a whole thing. It's the whole thing. Someone needs to invent a game or make a game about choosing what to play, but it like imports your own Steam library and helps you choose what to play. That would be great.
It's a good idea. All
Put
right,
that
I'm
on the
abandoning my horror game.
spreadsheet.
I'm pivoting,
Oh,
making
um,
Beck's game about picking the game to play next.
the game of indecision.
Yeah.
No, the spin wheel things though, I can understand people
Yeah.
doing the randomized things, except I have way too many to put into that. I'm not spending all that time putting into
Yeah, the upfront admin cost of putting the spin wheel
Yep.
together. Yeah.
No, thank you.
No, I've started to even be like disciplined about what games I play as well, and I have a
Yeah.
spreadsheet now for that as well of like
Love it.
ordered in significance of like for me, like playing games is also research, and there's games
Yeah.
that I think historically are important games to play to learn about game mechanics. So, for example,
Yeah.
Slay the Spire, I had for ages. I never played it. I didn't like the art style. I played it for a little bit and didn't enjoy it straight away, and I dropped it. And then had a discussion with some of my close friends who are game designers, and one of them listed it as his favorite game of all time. And I thought, okay,
Yeah.
if one of my friends who I respect as a game designer says it's his favorite game of all time, I need to play it to understand it, to get better as a designer. And so yeah, I recently played a bunch of Slay the Spire to understand that, which was interesting from the lens of I've played games that are inspired by it already. So it was
Yeah.
kind of a jump back in time to understand like this was kind of the first of its genre
Yeah.
that it defined. So that was interesting. But yeah, and again, I think that's some other advice that I have for game developers is that time to play games is important too. Like obviously you can't just do it all the time, otherwise you never get anything
Yep.
done. But you do learn a lot from old and new games. And I think you'd be surprised emulating old games, some of the new ideas that they had that, like for me, Chrono Trigger, I think is still just so far ahead of its time and holds up so well. And there's the elements of the design of Chrono Trigger that I don't think ended up influencing the industry, and everyone went in that direction. Everyone kind of forgot about the good things that game did. So yeah, I think it's important to play new and old games to really understand what makes a good game, to make your own development process better.
Yeah, I think that's such valuable advice. I have like I started this year like a journal, like a paper journal,
Nice.
and it's reading and games, but I've got like different game challenges and different like, a list of my backlog, and I put in like all my little reviews and stuff in there, and that has been so valuable this year because it's more intentional. It's not just I'm just going to pick up a game and play it for the sake of playing it or, whatever, but it just is like, no, here I've got this challenge, like I've got like bingo boards that you've got to like do different things and like a genre tracker and all sorts of things. So I highly recommend it if you're looking for a focused way. You've got your spreadsheet, I've got a journal,
Yep.
but it's a lot of fun, like changing how you approach what you play and playing things more intentionally, I think can be really rewarding rather than just picking up whatever's new and trending or what your mates are playing or whatever it may be.
And I'm lucky enough that I don't think viewing games from like an analytical lens has ruined the fun for me. I know some people, more so in the film industry, where they become so analytical of everything that they watch that they can't just sit back and enjoy it. I think fortunately for me with games, it's kind of the opposite, where I appreciate it even more. Like I'll be enjoying the game, but then I'd think like, oh man, the way they did this mechanical design, this is really inspiring. Like I'd love to put that in my game, and it ends up making me enjoy the game more because I'm actually analyzing the process of how it was made as well. So that's a good thing about journaling and writing down. And I should get around to actually like reviewing games, but
even just for yourself. Like I think nowadays there's a lot of pressure on like, well, if you're doing something, what's the value of it? But doing things for yourself, I think, has become something that is like not done as much. Or it's like, oh, you're reviewing games, but are you doing anything with those reviews? Are you putting them anywhere?
Yeah, and you don't
it's
need
like,
to. Yeah, I agree. It's like not everything has to have an audience or an outcome or bring in revenue. It's like, no, you can. Like, I find that one of my favorite things to do after watching movies is going on Letterboxd and writing a little review. And it's not for anyone else. It's just me tracking it and encapsulating my thoughts at the time. And occasionally looking back and being like, oh, we're talking about this film. What did I think of that back in, when I watched it in like 2014? And I look, I'm like, oh, okay, I really liked Interstellar.
Yeah.
I wrote this about it, it can be just for yourself. I think that is quite valuable. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a fun way to like bring, I don't know, just a bit more meaning to what you're playing rather than it just being, oh, I just played this game for like 2 hours. Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
And it's not wasted time.
No.
Obviously, I'm preaching to the choir here, but a lot of
Yep.
people think like, oh, you waste so much time playing. I mean, there is a degree of that. If you're putting, thousands of hours into one game and you're neglecting, your social life and your job or whatever, yeah, sure, that might be wasting the time, but time spent playing and enjoying interactive, media and creative artwork is important.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Lucky last question. You've already kind of touched on a lot of this, but do you have any other advice for aspiring developers or other game developers out there?
Yeah, I do. I mean, this advice isn't new or unique, and a lot of people have probably heard it a lot, but it's one thing that I really preach a lot is to reduce your scope of what you're doing. Like what I was saying before about a lot of people putting all their time and effort and passion into one big, huge project and then either never finishing it or putting it out there and it doesn't sell well or isn't received well, and then they burn themselves out and don't want to do game development anymore. Yeah, my advice would be like, make this the smallest game possible. Give yourself a challenge to make like a tiny little game in like 6 months, and the lessons you'll learn from that process of just finishing the game will benefit the next one, and just keep making games. And if you feel comfortable extending that scope out a bit more, then do that. But again, like making games is hard, and even people who make games underestimate the time it takes to do them. So you're always better just reducing that scope. The smallest game you can possibly think of is still going to take a lot of your time. And that's why I learned a lot. I don't do them so much anymore because of time commitments, but I used to do a lot of game jams.
Yeah.
That's where I've really cut my teeth on programming, because I was programming it in anger to just get something done, get solution. But it was enough to get it working to then understand the process, to then the next time I wanted to make a game to revisit that code I wrote and be like, okay, here's where it wasn't very nice. Here's how I can do it better. And, I had all these projects that I'd done to back that up. So yeah, keep the scope extremely small, schedule time to work on the game, but also schedule time to not work on the game. Don't neglect the other parts of your life. And yeah, you can do it. Like I work full time and I got 2 kids and I released a game and I didn't burn out. I wasn't working crazy hours. The only reason I was able to get it done was by keeping the scope small and scheduling time to have those few hours to be as efficient as possible. And yeah, I was able to do it, still enjoy doing it, and we'll continue doing it.
Awesome. That's really great advice, I think, that anyone could take on, not just for games, but just in general. Yeah. Awesome. All right. We are going to wrap it up there. Thank you so much for coming on and chatting all about all of the adventures with Pie in the Sky and
no problem.
All of the things that went on there. It's been great to chat with you. If you are interested, we will leave the link to Pie in the Sky in the description below, so you can go and check it out. If you love chaos games and like the PS2 games, you will love this game. So definitely check it out. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us. And until next time, stay caffeinated.
Cheers. Thanks for having me.